Greetings. Welcome to day 5 of the 30 days of Halloween. Today's topic is magical vinegars. I'm going to be making 2 magical vinegars to share that you might want to make for your own cupboards. Now, before we get started, I want to say, I know I'm going to be asked, what does vinegar have to do with Halloween? If you are a witch, it has everything to do with Halloween. If you're not a witch and you're watching me out of just curiosity, you're welcome, but you still might want to make these vinegars because they're really good for purposes other than magical purposes. Okay. I want to just take 1 second and remind everybody that when we talk about witches, historically, we're talking about women who were used to be called the wise women in some communities. They were known as the wise women because they were the women who were the healers and the ones who made the potions and the salves and things, and were the midwives, and they were like the clinic. Their homes were like the clinics very often, like we see today, neighborhood clinic. Certainly they were the doctors. In many cases, the only thing closest to a doctor there was. So people went to them for all kinds of things, and this has been historically the case. And the 2 recipes that we're going to make today, both are based on recipes that have been made for many years, all over the world, in different civilizations. Okay. The first one I want to talk to, I know you've heard of both of them, and I just want to clear up a little bit what they are, because if you want to Google either of these, put them in the Google or put them here on YouTube and look or whatever, you're going to find all kinds of information about both of them. You're going to find all kinds of recipes for both of them. Some might be like mine, some might be similar to mine, some might be completely different than mine. It doesn't make them better or worse than mine. I am just showing you what I use, and I'm going to tell you what I use and why, and what I use them for. Okay. Now, if you watched yesterday's video, I showed you how to make vinegar, and ultimately, if you get into making vinegars, definitely your homemade vinegar is something that you could use in either of these recipes. It's not necessary. You can use any. This begins with a base of vinegar, then we're going to add ingredients to make them both special and unique. Okay, for both health purposes and magical purposes. Okay, you can start with any vinegar of your choosing as the base. Traditionally, I use apple cider vinegar because I use apple cider vinegar very often in my cooking and my at home, and also in cleaning. I use it for a lot of things. Now, vinegar is best, in my opinion, if you use an organic kind. This I'm using today, you've seen this before. This is Bragg's raw unfiltered apple cider vinegar with the mother. Remember I talked about the mother yesterday. If you look carefully, it might just show up as cloudiness in here, but if I tilt the bottle, I can see a lot of sediment. It looks like sediment on the bottom of the bottle here, like a dark sediment. And I can sort of see a little thready something in there. That's actually the mother. That's nothing wrong with that. That's not apples. It's actually the mother. And that's very healthy and has good properties. So, but you can use a wine vinegar. You can use red wine vinegar. We have that a lot. I use that a lot. Or white wine vinegar. Or you could use like a, let's see. What other kind of vinegars might you use? I don't think I would use a distilled vinegar. Mm-mm. You can, and I don't mean to be that way. I have a thing about distilled vinegar. I don't use that I use a distilled vinegar if I want to unclog my drain. I don't think it really has any value other than that. I don't think it's really made the same as vinegar. I'm not sure. There's something about it. It's distilled. It's all different. It's a different thing, but it still serves as a vinegar. I'm going to be there. I'm going to say it still serves as a vinegar. Um, but anyway, I don't want to get into that too much. But for my purposes today, I'm using apple cider vinegar, which I consider to be one of the most healthiest vinegars you can have. And we are talking a lot about our health. And that's not just magic, we're talking about health too. Okay. So the first vinegar that I want to make for you is, it's called for Thieves Vinegar. And I know you've heard of it, but it's very famous. It was first, it's according to the stories, it was first discovered in the Middle Ages during the plague, 14th century plague. Purportedly, there were 4 thieves who were making quite profit off of stealing things from the bodies of plague victims, or from the homes of plague victims, going into their homes after people had passed, or just picking the pockets of a dead man laying on the street, whatever, stealing all kinds of things. And they they did this quite regularly, and they never got sick. Why didn't they get the plague? You know, they didn't know anything about medicine in those days. Really, it was quite crude, the knowledge that they had, quite elementary maybe, or maybe they had some misconceptions. Some of them were even misconceptions about their ideas on disease, germs, things like that. But one thing was for sure, these people were alive. And they asked them eventually, what was your secret? And they mentioned that they had this vinegar, this concoction, that they, I don't know if they drank it. I don't know. Some stories might think that they drank it, but I don't think they drank it necessarily. I think they, but they did, use it to spread around their face, and they used it on their hands, and maybe they had, it was very common during the plague. You see the pictures of the people in the masks. They would have a mask with a long kind of a nose, and down here there would be some kind of something that they were inhaling, substance in this end of it, to help them cover the stench, first of all, of the decaying bodies around them, but also it was a very crude kind of an air filter, or a mask, a filtering mask. Yes, rubbing things over your face, even then, was something that people did, but I think they did it more, not so much for germs, but it's a natural reflex. If you've ever been at anything decaying or rotting, I've never been around a rotting corpse, but of a person, but I've certainly had dead possums under my deck, which, oh my, we had to rip the deck out to get to try to get rid of the source of the odor. Was really horrifying. So your initial reaction is to cover your nose. You don't want to smell it. So having that handkerchief or whatever across your face is really a reflex reaction for a lot of people. Okay, but anyway, this was supposedly happened in the Middle Ages, and somewhere around the 19th century, late 19th century, early 20th century, a French chemist, his name was René Maurice Gattefossé. He was a chemist, and someone in the beginning of the 20th century. He first coined the term aromatherapy, and he wrote a book, and in that book he, I think, copied down a recipe that he thought wasn't the original, but something that maybe showed up in the earlier century that they thought was the recipe for Thieves Vinegar we're going to call today. Okay. And most things are going to be based on that. Most of the recipes are going to be based pretty much on the ingredients found in that, with some variations. With some variations. Remember I said yesterday, like things like cinnamon. I've said in the past things like rosemary, which we're going to be using today. They've been used for centuries, very commonly for a lot of things, both medicinally and magically. So this really makes sense. Okay. Before we go along any further, I'm going to say that both of these recipes claim health benefits, which I am not a doctor and I cannot attest to. I am not an herbalist. I cannot attest to the accuracy of my statements. other than what my research tells me. I also have to say emphatically, I am not saying this is going to help anybody in any way avoid contracting COVID virus. No way has anything to do with that. Even though it's something that we could use to ward off maybe regular colds, maybe regular flus, that is an entirely different subject. I'm not even going to touch it. You understand when I say I'm not even going to touch it? Please do not ever quote me and say I said anything about that, because I absolutely did not. I will absolutely deny. Okay? We got to be clear on that. We have to be clear on that. And I'm trusting you. I'm trusting you to make that distinction. Okay? We're not talking about that today. Okay? When we talk about health benefits, we are talking about health issues, colds, flus, those kind of things. And we're talking about protection things, magically protection things, etc. Okay? Which I do claim some knowledge on that, in that area. Okay, so, Monsieur Gattevosse said he liked a recipe. I think we're going to base the recipe on the one he liked. For whatever reason, people didn't get sick, so we're going to use his. And we're going to start this recipe. We're going to do the 4 thieves first, and we're starting with both actually a quart jar. I just chose a quart jar at random. I like the size of a quart jar for this kind of thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting some things in the jar and then filling it with the vinegar, letting that steep for a period of time. Then ultimately we'll decant that, filter out the solids, and then this will be something that we're going to keep in the cupboard. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the ingredients I'm going to put in here and why I add them to my 4 thieves vinegar. And remember, I'm looking for a 4 thieves vinegar, something that is going to help with a lot of reasons. Okay, it's going to help me medicinally. It's going to help me perhaps keep me from becoming ill. It might, it's going to boost my own immune system. The idea is keep me healthy, keep me, I could use this to ingest it. I could use it to clean my area. Vinegar is used in cleaning all the time. All the time. My basis of my vinegar, remember I told you yesterday, was citrus vinegar. I use the citrus vinegar base for my cleaning of all the surfaces in my house. So this is a really good thing to use to cleanse, literally, tables, your house, around your doorway, to keep it clean, but also to keep it clean magically. So it solves two problems in one swipe. Okay, so what are we going to put in here first? Well, the first thing we're going to add is garlic. And if you don't like garlic, you might just want to change the channel because garlic has so many properties and it has so many healing properties. And this is not something that you're going to serve and eat for dinner. This is something that you're going to use either to keep yourself healthy or to keep your home safe. So we need a garlic, and we need a whole entire head of garlic, okay? Which I happen to have here because I didn't want to take the time to peel the garlic. But what I've done is I've simply pulled all of the skins off of the garlic, and I just throw in all the cloves in that head into my jar. Okay? It's a lot of garlic, right? Now, why do we use garlic? It's a good antiviral, antibacterial, and it is great for protection, and it is great for healing of all kinds, okay? The next thing I'm going to add to my jar is, let's say, okay, rosemary. I have it written down here in my book, so let me see what rosemary. And although I have a whole bush of rosemary, in my garden, I want to use dried herbs, and that's what I want to talk to you about. You can use fresh herbs in here, but when I'm making any kind of a tincture or any kind of something like this that I'm going to have steeping, I try to start with dried, because if you use fresh, and sometimes if we get into making tinctures later, which I don't know if anybody's interested or not, but I do make a lot of tinctures using herbs and things from my garden. you need a lot. First of all, you need a lot of them. A dried herb is concentrated, but also all the water from the herbs that are fresh are going to end up going into here as it steeps, you know, for a period of weeks, whatever, and it's going to water down your brew. It's going to water it down. So if you start out with dry ingredients, dried herbs, you're not going to have that problem. Okay, so this is one exception. I usually use fresh. This time I'm going to use dry, just because. And I'm going to put in rosemary. Now rosemary is so interesting. I just mentioned it was grown in the garden. And there's a saying that says where rosemary grows, a woman rules. Which means if you have a really strong, nice, healthy rosemary bush in the garden, it might be an indication that the woman is the head of the house, or woman rules. I'm not the head of a house, but I'm a strong witch, if you want to say it that way. So, and I have a lot of... My husband's a witch too, but I don't want to have a witch more with him. He doesn't take it on as a full-time job like I do. But anyway, one thing I did want to say about the rosemary in the garden is there's a good attractor for elves. It attracts elves and it repels thieves. So one thing I thought was cute about this recipe that takes the rosemary, that would normally take it from my garden and take it into and put it into this vinegar, is that if I did succumb to anything, it would keep me safe from the thieves entering my house at night, or pillaging my body for my wealth or whatever I have. Not that I have any. But anyway. But any rosemary, I'm going to put in about 2 tablespoons. So I have this, and this is of course the dry. If you have fresh, it's going to be a lot more, and I'm not going to measure. I hope I can do this with a fan. I'll try to do it this left-handed. Let me move my things here. My bottle's out of the way. So I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons, and for me that's just like 2 palmfuls. This is not something we're going to worry about the recipe. We're going to... So I just put the size of a tablespoon measure in my hand. I just heap it up in my hand. I'm afraid to hold it out that you could see it, but because of the fan going, it'll be everywhere. The little bit of dried herb on my floor won't matter because it's good for repelling insects. So there's my rosemary, which I have for the reasons that I stated. Another thing that I have is, so I'm going to set that aside so I don't renew it. Another thing I have is thyme. Thyme is great. Thyme happens to be the herb that it's reported to have the highest level of antioxidants of any other herb. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I got that out of several sources. And for one thing, it's very, very it's very highly used for a lot of things. It's a high level of antioxidant. It's very powerful in helping to, it works against staph infections, E. coli, salmonella. Again, I wouldn't take it if I had food poisoning. I wouldn't just try to take some time and be better. No, but it has those properties, to some degree at least. And magically, it purifies, it protects, and also during the Middle Ages, it was used to heal. You know, the people that caught the plague and didn't die, a lot of them were left with these blistering sores on their body, and thyme was something that they used to heal those. So that's pretty cool. And I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of thyme again. So again, in my palm, I'm going to measure out 2. Seems like a lot, but we're making a powerful mixture. Okay, so there's my thyme. And another herb I'm taking is sage. And this is again dried sage, and this is not the sage from my garden, because the sage in my garden is white California sage, California white sage. Not really edible. I guess you could eat it, or drink it or whatever, but it doesn't have a good flavor. No, this is just common garden sage, and you could get this in the grocery store very readily in the spice section, or you can get fresh sage in the grocery store too. Completely different herb kind of sage than what I have. And again, sage, I'm going to use 2 tablespoons again of sage. Sage is one of the ingredients in stuffing at Thanksgiving. Oh, this smells so good. And the poultry seasoning, you know, I don't know about you, but I just love that poultry seasoning. So there's sage. And look, I'll just hold my jar because I want you to see. I'm getting a nice amount of herbs there in the base of my jar. So this is going to be potent. And the sage, the reason the sage is in there, it's very effective against preventing a throat, you know, getting sore, being sore, or a cough or inflammation. It helps prevent that inflammation that might occur in your throat that would lead to having a cough or leading to having a sore throat. That's what I'm trying to say. So sage is really good that way. Okay. Now we're going to add some other interesting things. I have my bottles here. Let me move this garlic out of the way. And I have here a couple interesting things. One thing I have here is clove. Whole cloves. It's an antiseptic. It is a very strong protection herb, protection spice. I guess it would be a spice because it is a seed. It's a seed. When we use the seeds, that's the spice. It's for protection and banishes evil. It has been used for centuries to banish evil, and it shows up a lot of times in witches' purses or mojo bags that you hang. Like I have them here in my home and over my coop. If something like clove is often used in those, or in protection that people carry with them as clove. It also raises the spiritual vibration. So if you're talking about, you know, at Halloween, or it's Halloween on Halloween, or it's Halloween, when the veil is thin, and you're trying to communicate with some of the spirits, this might help raise the vibrations. It makes that happen easier. So I'm going to take about a teaspoon of this. It doesn't have to be measured, but it's easier to spoon out if I take it by spoon and put it in my jar. Okay. All right. So there's that. Now I have black peppercorns. This is kind of just use the same kind you put in a spice grinder in your kitchen. Just regular black pepper. Black pepper is really good to use. We use it a lot in all kinds of things. It helps just heat things up a little bit, spice it up. Maybe if I poured it would be better. I'm going to pour like a teaspoon. Whoops. In here. All right. Then I have another one, very interesting, is juniper berry. And I use juniper berry. I have these jars. You can probably go, oh, you got the coolest jars. These jars I have in my cupboard, inside my cupboard. I have these for my medieval spices. And the jars aren't medieval. This is one way that I keep, I make sure I have a collection of spices that I use regularly in my medieval cooking. That's used for seasoning regularly in medieval cooking. I have a section of that, so I don't have to sort through all of my spices in my cooking drawer in the kitchen, my herb drawer in the kitchen, if I have all the other spices, or in my herb jar in the parlor where I have my magical herbs. I have like them different places because they really add up. If you're a cook and you're a witch and you're a it adds up. So I try to keep them separate. And I've got about a dozen. I think I have a dozen of these. They're old from an old drugstore from probably the 60s, 50s or 60s, I think. So that's just fun. But anyway, juniper berry is something I use a lot. Juniper berry is what they use to make gin. I've never made gin. Juniper berry is used in making corned beef. You know, corned beef and cabbage. You know, corned beef. I think juniper is in that, I believe. Not sure, something like that. But anyway, juniper has a lot of protection in it, but it has an antibacterial, an anti-inflammatory. It guard again. That again, they used to hang juniper. They used to hang the boughs from the tree over the doors to guard against evil entering. It can banish curses. It can banish hexes. And you can bury it in poppets, and you can hang it in a mojo bag, just like I talked about, mojo bag or witch's purse, I call them, hanging over your doors to protect you. So this is cool. You could also put them in a witch's jar, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. Not today. Okay, so there's a lot of things. You don't want to eat too many of them. I think there's a toxicity associated with eating too many. But we can put a teaspoon safely into here. And remember, we're not going to chew these. We're just going to get the benefits from having them steep in the brew. And then finally, that I'm putting in here is a cinnamon stick. Just a regular cinnamon stick. Cinnamon sticks are used, we talked about cinnamon, and cinnamon always can heat it up. Heat up the spell. You know, it's protection herb. There's so many things about cinnamon. Anyway, I'm just dropping that in as it is. Okay, so I have all my dry things in here. Simple. I'm taking my vinegar. I'm giving it a shake because I don't know if it's going to take the bottle or what. But I'm going to pour as much of it in my jar as I have room. So I'm saying if you wanted to use a smaller jar and just use like about half as much as I did in a pint jar, that's okay. But then just fill it when you're done with your dry. Fill it up with your vinegar. Okay, and I'm just pouring vinegar. And I love the smell. And the herbs are going to, and I'm going to leave a little bit of space, like I did when I made the vinegar. I'm not going to, I'm not introducing any air into it, but I want to be able to give this a shake from time to time. So I want to get it, I'm going to shake it right now to start out with. So it didn't take the whole jar, but it took about that much. I have about that much left. But I'm going to use that. And then I just have, you can use any kind of a lid. I don't use candy lids for this, for storing something like that, because candy lids are so precious, especially now. There's like a shortage of them. After, like as if toilet paper wasn't bad enough. Now there's a shortage of candy and supplies. Anyway, so I use these plastic storage lids. I also can tell at a glance like what's in it. I get it like a color code in my head. But anyway, or you can use, if it's a mayonnaise jar of whatever, marinara jar, sauce, or whatever jar you have, you can use the lid that's on them. Just so it's tight, a good tight seal, because you want to be able to give it a shake. And I would just give this a shake, mix it up every day or so, give it a shake. When you think about it, I'd leave it on the counter for probably about 2 weeks between, it says about 2 to 4 weeks. And this is we're talking about 30 days of Halloween. If you want to do this before Halloween, I would leave it as close as you can get to your Halloween celebration, your Samhain, whatever you're going to do at home. Especially if you're going to talk with some things out for the ancestors or things like that. I would keep it as long as you can, and then I would strain it. And you can, if you want to, use it to wash your floors or spray, you can put it in a spray bottle and spray around your door. You can, whatever. Use your imagination, however you think it works. If you want to set up an ancestor table and you want to protect it against evil, the dead that you don't want showing up before you dress your altar, you might want to wipe off your altar before with some of this, and then go ahead and dress your altar, and that's giving your altar some protection. Use your imagination. You're witches. You know what to do. Trust your instincts. The memory's there. The memory is in your DNA. I think it is. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to put that aside, and we're going to move on to recipe number 2. The second magical vinegar that we're going to make today is called fire cider. Again, you've read about it all over the internet, heard about it all over the internet, but you know where it comes from and what actually it is and why it works. I'm going to share my recipe with you, which is based very closely on the original recipe made by Rosemary Gladstar, who was a very famous herbalist in the late 1970s. And I think she's the first person to publish, as far as I know, a recipe for fire cider, calling it fire cider. but it's been published by many people since, including people like Martha Stewart. She even has her own recipe for fire cider. So this is not just used by witches, it's used by everybody, but most witches, just about every witch, when you mention the term fire cider, they know what you're talking about. Because it's a really, really important ingredient to have in your cupboard. It's a really important ingredient to have in all of your cupboards, everybody's cupboard, I think. And I'm making a special batch of it. The one I'm making in special batches today, I'm going to be giving it to my daughter, my eldest daughter, who is very, very prone to sinus infections during the wintertime particularly. And I think this is going to help her alleviate some of the symptoms of that. It's kind of funny because in our family, anytime, I have to admit that my children got this from me, but I'm a lover of NyQuil. And if you like NyQuil, you know what I'm talking about. That I am a person who keeps NyQuil around. I've got my husband doing it. My children have been raised with this idea, and now my children are all adults, and they do this as well. When they start to feel just not quite so right, especially in the wintertime, when it's cold, and they just maybe starting to feel a little achy, or maybe they're starting to come down with something. I don't know. I don't feel sick, but I don't know. I don't feel right. Take a shot of NyQuil. Because NyQuil is wonderful. NyQuil has a lot of the medicines in it. Of course, you have a cold or flu. It helps alleviate, get rid of the achiness. But it's very warming. It does contain alcohol, so it helps you sleep. It has a lot of wonderful properties. But it also has some other harsh medicines in here. And I'm hoping that this fire cider might be a good alternative for her, because she does not take NyQuil as she's a teacher. And if she wakes up not feeling quite right, she's not going to self-medicate with something that has alcohol in it. That's not her style. I think when I was a teacher, I probably took a shot of NyQuil on a day that I didn't feel too good and I had to be in the classroom. But it's another story. But it will help relieve. So she tried to take like Dayquil or something, which is supposed to be like NyQuil but without the thing. I don't think it works. Because that warmth that you get from it, that feeling of warmth and comfort and taking away the aches, that's really what you need. And it's not just the the pain reliever in there. It's something a little more to it, which I think fire cider will give you. Fire cider is not something based. Not something that was made in the Middle Ages that I know of, like the Thieves Vinegar was, but it really dates to the Middle Ages because it's an oxymel, and oxymels are very, very commonly made as a form of medicine of all kinds in the Middle Ages, during the Middle Ages. So I'm not saying they couldn't have made fire cider. Some of the ingredients that I'm putting in mine today, they did not have access to, so their recipe would not have been the same. But they could make an oxymel very similar and used for the same purpose that I'm using for it today. This is something that, if you want to know what an oxymel is, I want to explain. We have all heard of mead, if I can explain it this way. When they had basic, they brewed ales out of grains. They brewed, and beers came out of grains. They brewed meads, which they brewed from honey. If they added fruit to the brew, to the honey brew, to the mead, it became a melomel. And if they just forego the brewing process and use the vinegar, remember when alcohol turns to vinegar, and use that vinegar, or the vinegar that was made naturally as their fruit rotted, it produced a vinegar. That vinegar that they collected and they were very, very fond of, added with honey, and then had herbs or whatever added to that, spices or herbs, ingredients added to that, they used as a medicine, and that's called an oxymel. And so this is an oxymel, and we're not going to make their recipe. We're making, again, I'm making rather close to Rosemary Gladstar's recipe, because I find you don't need to improve on a really good thing. And her recipe just was really simple. She used a few simple ingredients that we have easy access to. And of course, the first one that she used, the first thing that happened was, yes, again, another head of garlic. Before I go further into the recipe, I just want to make sure that I have been clear on the difference between these two recipes. They're not just two different versions of the same recipe. Actually, even though some people might use one for both, I'm not saying that they can't, but it is my intention. Remember, intention, to me, as a witch, intention is everything. And my intention in these two recipes is different. The first one that I just showed you, the Four Thieves, I use that as a preventative. It's a preventative recipe. I don't already feel sick. I am not already sick and trying to cure something. I am trying to prevent it. The example I want to use to explain this is, if you've ever flown, remember flying before COVID, we used to fly places, especially at the holidays when the planes were really crowded and everybody was rushed, and you're tired and you're stressed and your natural defenses are a little bit low. Getting on a plane at that time, my husband and I used something called Airborne. Comes in a little tube, and it's something that the tablets, it has tablets that are effervescent, like Alka-Seltzer kind of thing, that you drop in water and it dissolves in water and then you drink it. And it's supposed to really, really boost your immune system and keep you from catching colds and on the plane, and where we're very, very confined spaces. I don't know what's in it exactly, but I know it has very, very high doses of vitamin C, which cannot hurt you. Your body, if you are taking an overdose of some vitamins, can be very toxic. But vitamin C, what your body does not use, you will pass in the form of urine out of your body. So it's something that you really can hurt yourself with it. And I swear by that. We both swear by that. We take it all the time before we fly. So that is a preventative. But we don't take it because we're sick or we feel bad. That's a preventative. So Four Thieves Vinegar, which we just made, is going to be something that's going to help you prevent illness, perhaps keeping your boost your immune system, but also protection, a preventative from having things coming in and that are not welcome in your home, and keeping things, hexes or curses off of you, or those kind of things, right? So it's a preventative measure. This we're making now, fire cider, is something that I use. It's also kind of a preventative, but there's a reason that I take it. I have a reason. I'm starting to feel a little bit achy, or I'm starting to feel a cold coming on, or I'm starting to feel the first symptoms of maybe the flu, not COVID, but just the flu. Maybe I'm worried about getting my daughter might be worried about, I feel like I'm starting to get another sinus infection. This is something that's going to knock it out of her. This is going to knock it out of her. Just like maybe the NyQuil knocked it out of my system and helps us and knocked us out. Enabled us to sleep better, enable us to do things. So that's the properties that were involved here. So this is something that it's already come, and we're trying to alleviate some of the symptoms. We're not dead on sick. We're not full-blown flu, full-blown, because at that point you probably need something more. Like, I don't know what, but I don't know if this is going to help you or not. Okay, so I'm going to tell you just quickly, we'll try to be quick, what I put in this substance. I'm starting again with a 2-quart jar, and I'm going to put, another head of garlic for the very same reasons. Garlic is absolutely essential. Garlic is no lovely matter. People that are garlic haters, I can't help you. Garlic, according to a lot of people, keeps away vampires. Like, if you believe in vampires, I don't know. But, for centuries, people have thought garlic has taken away evil. So garlic is a really excellent source of a lot of really important things that you need. Okay? It also helps, if you're already getting sick, it helps you with upper respiratory infections, and helps you with, for instance, like sinus problems, infected sinuses. Sinus infections is exactly what my daughter needs. If this doesn't knock it out of her, nothing will. This is not like that deep chest, You always talk about upper respiratory. It's the thing that makes you cough and sneeze and your nose run and blow, or you get headaches or pressure in your sinuses. Lower chest, we're not talking about the lower chest where you have some kind of something that needs to be loosened up in your chest. This is not maybe specific. Garlic's not going to be specific to that. But onion, onion is really good too. Now, onion and garlic, oh my goodness, my daughter, if she knew that onion was here, she wouldn't want to eat it. She wouldn't want to drink this, but which I'm going to tell you later how we take this. Don't want to forget. But basically, I wanted to go about the same size. If we're going to follow Rosemary Gladstar's recipe, it's about equal parts. This is, of course, bigger than this, but when we're cutting it off the stem end. We're not going to use that. Okay, so, and then the rest of it, I could slice it, but I'm just going to make chunks, like the garlic chunks, right? So each piece, I cut in like 6 pieces, and I'm just dropping those chunks in there. It's going to break up, because we're going to do the same thing as we did with the 4 thieves. We're going to be shaking this to stir it. So I just put those onion pieces in there. Wipe my hands. Okay. Then I'm going to put in ginger. And I'm not talking about the dry ginger. I'm talking about the ginger that comes, you buy it in the produce section. It's this funny thing that looks like a big root. And it has, you know, a skin on the outside. And when I buy that, I usually cut it up in pieces about that long, just little inch-long pieces or whatever. And that was the last piece in this bag. I just stored in little bags like this, freezer bags, in my freezer. I cut them about this long. I take a spoon, the teaspoon, to the outside beforehand, using this part of the spoon, and I just peel it. Just run that along that peel, and it comes right off. It just rubs off. It's really hard to peel any other way. This way you can get around the little knobby places. And then I just drop these in my freezer, and when I have to use a little bit of garlic, they want grated garlic, I pull it out, and while it is frozen, I just grate some, and then it goes right back in the bag, whatever I didn't use. Here I'm just going to take my knife, and I'm just going to chop it. It's been sitting out just for a little while, so I can cut it. I'm just cutting it like in 4 or 5 pieces. Okay, and I'm going to add that to my jar. Just so it, you know, you don't have to grate it. Just throw it in there like that. That's really good. And the ginger is really good for, it's an antiviral. It is really good to boost your immune system and give you strength, give you a feeling of strength, you know, make you stronger. Oh, and the ginger, you know, smelling the ginger, oh, it smells wonderful after the garlic and onion on my hands. To have the ginger on my hands kind of takes the smell away. So it's really lovely for that. It will, in spell work, ginger is used to protect, but it is also used to boost the spell. You know, boost the energy, raise the energy in the spell. Kind of like something like cinnamon is used. Ginger is used for that too. It's considered a hot spice, same as cinnamon. In the dry form, you can even tell it sort of adds that little bit of dryness to your baked goods if you use ginger. But we use fresh ginger a lot in our cooking, so we have both forms. But for this form, you could use powdered ginger in this. But powdered spices in here is going to just make a murky, cloudy stuff. This kind of ginger, fresh ginger, is gonna, when you're done, it'll just, you know, you can pour this through a strainer, and the solids will just strain right out of it. So you're gonna be left with a nice, not a cloudy substance. Okay. One thing that I would have if I had fresh is horseradish, which horseradish is particularly good for Heather. It will be for my daughter Heather, because it helps with clearing the sinuses. And if I had fresh horseradish, I would use that. But since I do not have horseradish fresh, I believe the spring is when you could buy it. I don't know if you can buy it now or not, but I really don't use a lot of horseradish, so I didn't want to buy a big piece of horseradish just for this. Anyway, but I do use prepared horseradish. And prepared horseradish, not a horseradish spread, you want to look, if you use something like this, you want to look at the ingredients, and it should only say that it contains, this one contains horseradish root, distilled vinegar, water, and salt, and then some million chemicals. But you know, it doesn't have other things. It's not mayonnaise, or it's just horseradish, vinegar, which we're using anyway, and a little bit of salt, which never hurt anybody. So I'm going to take this and put it in here, and this is going to be kind of gloppy, but it's really an important ingredient. And I'm going to put a couple nice big spoonfuls of that in there. And then we're almost done. Almost done. This is really simple. I have dried chilies. I have some dried cayenne pepper here. I think these are cayenne. These might be cayenne. There might be some jalapenos in here. I dry all of my chilies that we grow in the garden that I can reconstitute later. Or these I will chop up real fine and crush and use for crushed up pepper, you know, that you can buy. Some people call that a piece of pepper. That's what this is. And especially when it's a combination of other kinds of chili peppers all at once. It's not just one kind. It's not just all cayenne or what. This is usually for me. I grow a lot of serranos, and I grow a lot of jalapenos and some others. But mostly that's what's in here. I get it from this red. I make my hot sauce out of those too. So I will use this to constitute this and make hot sauce, or just use some fresh peppers. But when they're dried, they're very handy for things like this. And I'm going to use, she asked for just a very small amount. Well, you know, what are you talking about? You know, I'm gonna break it in half. So I have this just a chili pod and all, just dried, and I'm gonna break one, dump it in. I think I'm gonna put 3 because they're really tiny. These are really tiny. Okay, that's gonna be plenty spicy. So there we go. And then what is left? Why are we putting the chili pepper? The chili pepper does what the alcohol does in the NyQuil. It just warms you up. It first of all warms you up, and because it increases your circulation, which is what, you know, I think alcohol is supposed to do in the beginning. It increases your circulation a little bit. And but cayenne does too. Any kind of pepper, any kind of red pepper, hot spicy pepper. Don't do something too terribly spicy. For us, serrano and jalapeno are not too spicy. For some people, you know, a lot of people go, oh, be careful, I'm going to use the Anaheim chili, and oh, be careful. For us, Anaheim chili is not even, it's just like eating a green pepper. There's no spice at all. So it depends on your taste, on your spice tolerance, heat tolerance, how much of this you want to put in, and what kind of pepper you want to use. But you could just use a little bit of the the roasted red pepper flakes or whatever that you get at the grocery store. You can just put those flakes in, and that's fine. And that's kind of what I did, but I did probably more than you would put. Okay, so anyway, I have those, and one more thing. Actually, 2 things, but only one that I'm going to add now. I'm going to put in the apple cider vinegar to fill. For the same reason, I'm going to use the remainder of that jar. And then I have another jar here that I can open. Let me move this out of the way. It's hard to get my camera at the right angle so that you can see. But here I got another bottle of the same kind of apple cider, which I can see the mother and the bottom, so I really want to give it a shake. This is just like the other recipe. We're going to keep this on the counter and shake it periodically. So I want to leave a little bit of headspace, just for room to shake. That's all, just some room so I can shake it. And then I have one more ingredient to add, but I'm not adding today, and that is honey. because this, when we go to decant this is not added till we decant this. Let me see, where's my lid? I'm going to put a lid on. I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm just going to give this a good shake. And this is going to sit 4 to 6 weeks. I'm not using this at Halloween or Samhain. This is not for that, really. This doesn't, I mean, you could use it for potions, like potions, for healing potions or those kind of things. But as far as the uses that we had the 4 Thieves for, where we're going to use it as a floor wash or washing the table or spreading around the door, those kind of things. This is really for a lot more magical purposes than fire cider. Fire cider is magic health-wise, but this is, the wise women who lived in the village, they would have used this for perhaps more magical purposes. And this is, oh, can you come? My daughter's not feeling too good. Can you give her something to make her feel better? That's what they would use this for. So this is medicinal. And so we can let this go a little bit longer than 4 weeks, which would take us up to Halloween. We want to go to maybe 6 weeks, even 8 weeks. I would maybe give this maybe 8 weeks, and then I'm going to strain all the solids out of it. And then I'm going to put in for about this much, about a half cup of honey. Now when I talk about honey, yes, it'll sweeten the taste. But also we want to use real honey. This is raw clover honey. If you have local honey, that's best, because if you have any kind of allergies, local honey helps alleviate your allergies. If you have local allergies to pollen or things that grow near you, your honey is a good remedy to alleviate the symptoms of those, or even to prevent the symptoms of those allergy attacks, environmental allergy attacks, for those things, anything that the bees can help with. But if you can't have that, just get a good raw honey or good clover honey. Make sure you get real honey. A lot of the honey, this comes from Azure Standard. I know this is good honey. A lot of honey that you'll find in the cheaper forms, like in maybe the dollar stores or places like that, look at the ingredients. This should say it contains honey, if there's even ingredients. There's no ingredients, because all this is honey. Raw clover honey, that's it. Okay? If it has, because some of those cheaper things have corn syrup, and they're not made with honey. It's a sugar. It's just made to look like it. They put it in a cute bear to buy it. So check your ingredients, read your ingredients. Wait, I talk a lot about that. I talk a lot about everything, don't I? Okay, this will stay in your refrigerator. You're going to be ingesting this. You're going to be taking this internally. That's what you're going to be using it for. So you want to make sure the shelf life. It will keep on your counter for about 6 months. It's not going to make me this much even after we take out the solids. It'll be a lot less in here. So it'll probably last you, it's not that much. You should be using it up before it'll be used up, probably just the season. But in case you didn't use it all and you had to keep it longer, it will keep in the refrigerator for much longer, probably 3 times that long. Okay. So anyway, you're going to ingest this. This you may be ingesting, you may be using for other things. This doesn't have all the things. This has in it, like the onion, this has different kind of ingredients. So just keep in mind, and what you're using it for. If you're going to be drinking this, can you drink it? That I don't think I mentioned that. Can you drink this for Thieves? Yes, you can. Some people just take a shot of it, but a lot of people think they don't like the taste so much, so they will take like a tablespoon or two and dilute it a little bit in a little glass of water, or put it in their tea, or they will use it in a salad dressing or in vinaigrette or in a marinade. But they want to ingest it that way, and not just take a shot. I would take a shot. You probably know that. I would just take a shot. I could also use it for other things if I wanted to, but I wouldn't have a problem taking a shot. I wouldn't have time. This stuff, you need to drink this. But again, if you find you can't drink it, you can put a little bit in your tea, put a little bit in your water. That's okay. But if you can drink a shot of NyQuil, I think you can handle a shot of this. No judgment. Okay, that's all. Not going to talk anymore. Hope you enjoyed it. Get your witch on this Halloween, ladies and men. Enjoy it. Really get your witch on and enjoy it, you know. Get your cupboards in order. Get your home in order. Protect yourself. Put up your protection inside and out. They're coming. Thanks for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. I wish you blessings.